869, or better still 094600 But if you want to join in on the conversation ongoing on the Twitter handle of the CDD, you can do so via following them at CDD West Africa. That is CDD West Africa, and the hashtag is Change Women Want. Now today in the studio is Mrs. BC Adeleye-Feyemi. She's a feminist activist, a policy advocate, a writer, and social entrepreneur. She's currently principal partner, Amla Consulting, and specializing in leadership development for women. And she runs an online community for women called AboveWhispers.com. She is also a UN Women Nigeria advisor, and she has worked on women's rights issues for many years around the world. Welcome to our program, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
And it's great to also have you. Now, electoral violence, like we know, is one problem that has been identified as a stumbling block to a robust participation of women in the political process and in governance. Now, violence against women in elections could be overt or subtle. Beyond violence, what does physical harm? There is violence manifesting in terms of gender-based hate speech with a sinister aim of deterring women from presenting themselves as candidates or voting in elections. Now, CDD is concerned about the gendering of violence in elections, and women are targeted in election violence at higher rates than male counterparts, especially as political candidates. Now, in many incidents, women are often being targeted, not necessarily related to their political actions or affiliations, but simply because they are women. Now, our guest, like I said, Mrs. BC Adeleye, will share her experiences to curtail electoral violence ahead of the 2019 general elections. Now, let's start this way, ma'am. In your new book, Loud Whispers, you place a lot of emphasis on women in leadership and decision making. Why do you think this is important?
It's important because we cannot have, in our country, Nigeria, a population of over 180 million people. At least half of our population is women. And we cannot continue to have a situation whereby women do not have a voice in issues that are of concern to them. And if you look at our National Assembly, where laws are being made and where issues are being raised to raise the aspirations and the concerns of millions of Nigerians, we have only 5.7% representation in the National Assembly. Yeah. And there are at least 8 states in Nigeria where we have no woman at all in the State House of Assembly. So it is a matter of justice. It is a matter of fairness. And it is a matter of ensuring that women have a voice. So it's important for us to have mechanisms in place to enable women participate fully in politics and decision making at all levels.
All right, so moving on, still on your book, right? In your chapter about a woman called Anna, you said that not all women seeking leadership positions can be supported by other women. Care to explain that to us and tell us what you mean by that?
Yes, something that we come across a lot of times is if women voted for other women, they would have no difficulty winning elections because women have significant numbers when it comes to voting power. Yeah. That is correct. Women have significant numbers, but we've also seen a case whereby a lot of women who want to put themselves forward for leadership just want to replace the boys. Women want to vote for women who bring a vision of transformation, who want to do business unusual, as opposed to doing business as usual with the boys. Women want to vote for women who are going to present their interests and their concerns and who are going to bring a new face to leadership. Women will not support other women who are going to be corrupt, inept, or mismanage resources and do basically the same things that have led to bad governance in this country over the years. So we want women as leaders in qualitative numbers, but we also want quantitative numbers, but we also want qualitative leadership as well. The same applies to the men as well. But we want, as women, we are demanding that we have more women in leadership, and we know that there are women out there who are capable, who are competent, who are courageous, and who will make a difference in this country.
Now, I often hear people say women are their own worst enemy. But you claim in your book that women are not their own worst enemies. Then why do women not vote for other women?
Women are not their own worst enemy. Do you want to know what women's worst enemy is?
Yeah, tell us about that.
It's patriarchy.
Okay.
The domination of all our political, economic, social, religious, and cultural systems by men. And so if our institutions and structures are male-dominated, those are the things that collude and collide to exclude women and young people from leadership. And so, yes, we do have one or two women who do nasty things to other women. We are talking about structural issues. As we began the program, we were talking about the conversation you want to have around violence against women. Mm-hmm. There is overt violence against women in electioneering. But some of the most insidious violence that women face when it comes to the political arena is structural violence, exclusion, the ways in which our political machineries exclude women. Women are only included up to a point. When women are required to sustain the party machineries through the singing and the dancing and the entertainment and the cooking, women are useful at that point. And when it comes to mobilizing other women out to vote. But once power has been claimed, women are pushed to the margins. Mm-hmm. And everything women need, they have to beg for. That's structural violence. And then when we see the few women who come out to contest for elections, she will hear her life history. How many husbands has she married, or whether she's married at all, how many children she has. All kinds of things get thrown into the mix. There's so much hate speech. There's so much intimidation. And there's always the assumption that women have no business being leaders in their communities. And so those are the issues that we need to address if we truly want to get to the root of electoral violence.
All right. You have an essay that is directed at political rookies. And I'd like to ask why it is so hard for young women or new people to get involved in politics. Why do you think that, what are some of the underlying factors that causes this attitude that we see?
Well, as I said earlier, these are structural issues. To begin with, a lot of our political machineries are inaccessible to new people. You get in if you happen to be part of a political dynasty, like your father or a relative of yours or your husband is able to hand over part of the political machinery to you. It's terribly expensive. It's expensive for men as well. Mm-hmm. But for women who have fewer resources that men have access to, and if you look at the role that money plays in our politics and in our electioneering, it's one of the most expensive endeavors in the world. You can hardly find any other African country where it's so expensive to run for elections. And I think we might be on par with a lot of countries in the western part of the world. And even then, I don't think you need billions of dollars in some of those places to become a member of the National Assembly or a state governor. So money plays a huge role. And then you also have the fact that when young people or women try to get into positions of leadership, they try to come with new ideas. They have new visions. They want to transform things. Yeah. And then you have a lot of people who are set in their ways, who see the resources available to the state, either at the national level or at the state level, as things to be used for their own personal needs, to support the things that they want to do, or just personally for them to slice up the so-called national pie. And so people who come with these ideas, who want to do things differently, who want an agenda for transformation, are again pushed to the margins, they're excluded, and they're told that they don't matter or they are not relevant.
All right, so how bad is the impact of electoral violence on women's political participation?
There are a number of things that are used to keep certain people out of politics. And I'm talking about women, young people, or anyone who wants to bring a breath of fresh air into the system. And one of the things that is used is the fear and intimidation that is so prevalent in political circles and political communities. Sure. You receive death threats. They pay militia or death squads or jobless young people to come and harass you. And when it comes to the issue of women, there is a lot of abuse and intimidation that is gender specific, kidnappings, rape or threats of rape and so on. And what that tends to do is it tends to scare people away. And that is the real intention, to scare you away so that you do not put yourself forward. And, once you get intimidated out of the space, then it's easy for the, the business as usual vultures to continue circling and doing their business. And so we need to get to a point where we have to have a consensus that the political space should be broad enough for all kinds of entities and actors. Women have a voice and a role. Young people have a voice and a role. If you have been a career politician all your life and you still want to engage in politics, that's okay. But don't act as if that space is for you and your family alone. There are other people who should have access to that space, because political spaces are meant for communities to benefit from, for new ideas, and for leadership to ensure that it is service to the people and not being served by people.
Okay. I know that on the Women Political Platform, we always focus on issues that have to do with women and their participation in politics. I would like to ask you from a personal point of view, over the years, in our history of democracy, and no doubt we've seen women who have come to the fore in terms of leadership and have made some sort of impact. But how much impact have you seen women make over the years in our democracy that to encourage, so as to encourage us to give more room for women?
We wouldn't have a democracy in our country without women. If you look back to the days of the struggle for independence and the roles that some key Nigerian women played, the late Mrs. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, Margaret Ekpo, and Gambo Sawaba, Leila Donguyaro. There are so many of them. If it hadn't been for the efforts of those foremothers of ours, we would actually be listening to people now who tell us that women have no role in leadership and decision making. But they played a key role in ensuring that Nigeria became a sovereign nation. So how come today it is so difficult to get women to be just the chairman of a local government in some of our states? There will be so much controversy. So women have contributed so much to the political development of our country, to nation building, to economic development, and so on. We can't have a nation without women. So that means we can't have a nation without the voices and the participation of women.
All right,
and it should not even be debatable. And that is why, for example, the issues of having affirmative action or quotas as a national policy or as part of our constitution is extremely important, because there's no level playing field. And if we have those policy frameworks and provisions, then we can go a long way in ensuring that these things move from rhetoric to action. Nigeria is fond of pointing to other countries where women play a key role, such as Rwanda, which has the highest number of women in parliament in the world at 62%. One of the reasons why, the main reason why Rwanda has that high number
is because of the genocide that left a lot of men dead.
People keep saying that, but that's actually not very fair. That contributed to it, because when communities collapsed and there was no one else, women were the ones who stepped in and helped rebuild Rwanda. But the main reason why we have so many numbers in decision making now is because there are constitutional provisions, to ensure that the same thing applies to South Africa, the same thing applies to Kenya and Uganda. Why can't we have the same thing in Nigeria? Every political season, women keep begging, give us more women in decision making, give us more women in the cabinet, give us more women in appointed positions, or asking the political parties to ensure that more women can run for office. Women should stop begging. We shouldn't have to beg. These actually should be rights that women are entitled to, because women are full citizens in Nigeria, not second-class citizens.
Indeed. All right, so after everything has been said and done, let's look at ways, to curb electoral violence from our polity. What do you think can be done to curb that in our polity?
I believe, for starters, that electoral management bodies, if you take ANEC, for example, at a national level and state level, should have a zero tolerance policy for violence.
Okay.
I also believe that we need to have as many campaigns as possible to curb hate speech. And charity begins at home, literally at home. It's to do with the way we talk about people to our children, or the way we encourage our children to talk about others. There is so much tension in the country now. There's so much ethnic tension. This is not the Nigeria I grew up in. Where the Nigeria I grew up in did not pay much attention to what part of the country you were from, whether you were Yoruba or Igbo or Hausa or Fulani and so on, whether you were a Christian or a Muslim. Now there's so much emphasis on all these things. And what it does is it further creates dichotomies. People dig into their comfort zones, and this is the foundation that is laid for intolerance and hate speech. So we need to go back to our homes, to our churches, to our schools, and ensure that we preach a culture of peace, and we ensure that there is zero tolerance for intolerance in our dealings, and minimize the level of propaganda we have on social media right now. Social media is supposed to be a space where people engage to share information, to mobilize around issues of interest, for entertainment, and all kinds of things that are positive. But unfortunately, it has become one of the nastiest spaces when it comes to politics and political participation. If you don't like someone or what they stand for, the next thing you do is to fabricate a story about them or about something. They take photographs of something that happened maybe 10 years ago, an accident somewhere, put it on WhatsApp and claim, oh, so and so people are being attacked. And before you know what is happening, hundreds and thousands of people are on alert. We need to minimize all those things. And then we need to encourage women to come out to participate in elections. Let them not be afraid. Let them not be intimidated. And we also need to encourage our party leaders to be fair, to ensure internal democracy, and to minimize the intimidation of newcomers, especially women and young people.
Interesting conversation here we've been having with our guest, Mrs. Bisi Adeleye-Feyemi. She is a feminist activist, a policy advocate, writer, and social entrepreneur, and she's been bearing her mind on the topic electoral violence and impact on women's participation. Now it's time to get you, the listeners, on board and have you contribute to the discussion. So far you've heard our own views about some of the factors militating against women, and of course with focus on violence and how we can curb that so as to free the space for more women to participate. But okay, before I do that, one interesting question that I would like to ask you is, tell us how you supported women as First Lady of Ekiti State.
Yes, thank you. I was First Lady of Ekiti State when my husband, Dr. Adeleye-Feyemi, was governor from 2010 to 2014. And one of the things that was important to me at the time was to ensure that all the work that I've done on women's rights around the world meant something to women in the state. As I said earlier, charity begins at home.
Yes.
And so I ensured that we put a lot of effort into legislative and policy frameworks. So we passed 3 bills: a gender-based violence prohibition bill, a gender and equal opportunities bill, and the HIV anti-stigma bill. And what the first 2 bills did, the GBV bill and the equal opportunities bill, was that it opened up opportunities for women in the state. It indicated that there was political will to ensure that violence against women would not be tolerated, and that opportunities would be made available to women as a matter of right and not as a matter of them begging all the time. I also ensured that more women came out to contest for elections. When the 2011 elections took place, we had a State House of Assembly of 26. Before going into that election, we had 26 members of the State House of Assembly, all male. And through lobbying and advocacy and support for some of the women, we ensured that 4 women won the election into the State House of Assembly. And that was the first time we'd have such a large number of women. It might sound small, but from 0 to 4, that's a great achievement. That was a major achievement at the time. And of course, women were visible in all areas of governance, in the state cabinet, in the local government, in leadership in the local government, and also a lot of women did well in the civil service as well. And it was very heartening to see that a lot of women around the state, who you might not necessarily call gender activists or feminists and so on, what they seemed to have been waiting for was an indication that they mattered, that they had a champion. And so in many areas, women started to stand up for themselves. Okay. And that's something that has, existed up to this point. So I'm extremely happy about that space was created, those opportunities were created for women in Ekiti State.
Interesting. All right, ma'am. It's been very interesting having this conversation with you. But let's hear from our listeners. I'm sure they will have one thought or question or something they just want to contribute to the discussion so far. 094600951 and 08095974869. Hello?
What?
Yes?
What?
Yes?
I'm the unit.
Okay, please make your point.
I greet your guest. You spoke very well. But I want to ask her. I love the point she made. 62% Rwanda women. In fact, she's really educating me. And part of the world, like Kenya, Uganda. Is that not true?
Yes.
I love it that way. But I just want to ask her. Do women of this part of the world called Nigeria love themselves? Why do I ask that question? You remember Sarah Jibril? You remember her?
Yes, of course. Go on.
Good. There was an election, and she was the only person that was counted. One. I was shocked. Does that mean that women in this part of the world called Nigeria don't love themselves? Actually, women are very good managers. I even prefer them in the helm of affairs. Look at Liberia, for instance. There has never been peace for long. But when that woman came on board, there was peace.
All right.
For 8 years. So please, let's advise our dear women to love themselves, and women, we can back them up. God bless you.
All right. I think it just goes back to what you said, that women are not their worst enemy, but the patriarchy. But let's have your response to that.
Yes, and thank you very much for that question. The Sarah Jibril episode was the defining moment when you talk about women and politics in Nigeria. And that goes to what I was talking about earlier. Sarah Jibril fell victim not because women did not vote for her. It was because she had been set up from the get-go. There was no way she was going to win that election because the powers that be within the political machinery had already made up their minds. They had already decided. Those are the things that I was talking about, the structural issues I was talking about. When you go up against those structures, that is what happens. And we should forever salute Sarah Jibril for her bravery and her determination, because she knew she was not going to win, but she wanted to make the point that I matter, I am here, and you can't wish me away. So I think we need to learn from that and look very closely at these structures. Why are they set up so solidly against new ideas, against newcomers, against women? And try and either create structures of our own or engage with the existing structures, or at least do whatever you can to ensure that we don't have the same people, the same entities making decisions on behalf of millions of Nigerians from one generation to the next.
All right, let's see who's here. The last caller. Hello.
Sorry, the last but not the least, again, please. And again, I love that answer. You gave me a very good answer. But I bet you, I didn't think we have enough time. See the callers on this platform. Women are not calling. They don't want to participate again. Please, I urge my dear women to participate in everything, particularly political arena. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Incham, for the great support. Hello. Yes.
And good morning to your guest. This is Tyra.
Okay, Tyra, please just make your point very quickly.
When it comes to do with politics in your info.
Go on.
The truth is that, like your guest has said, they are spoken it up. There's nothing that is easy for a woman in this country. Nothing at all. in terms of marriages, in terms of politics, everything. The woman has to always play the second fiddle. And so I got my heart for any woman who stands out in whatever she's doing. Women have potential. Believe you me, they say what a man can do, a woman can do better.
All right.
It's not a lie.
Okay. Thank you
I'm
so
telling
much.
you the truth.
Okay.
So let us start, even in your info. When I call in as a woman, the men, it's like when Messi holds a ball and the defenders, 5 or 6 defenders come after her.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we have to let you go. We just have a minute and we need your final word before we go, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Tara. I believe that you also have said it all. A lot of things are so difficult for women in our country. If it makes us feel any better, it's not just an issue to do with Nigerian women. It's a global issue as well. But since we are talking about our own situation as Nigerian women, my plea to women is we can't afford to give up because this country belongs to us. And the men who are making lives difficult for us are our husbands, our brothers, our sons. And so we need to engage them. For the men who are making life difficult for other women, remember that even if you don't want to support another woman because you think women have no place in leadership, do it out of enlightened self-interest. And what I mean by that is, every man has a mother. You will not want to see your mother maltreated. Many men have daughters. Many men have sisters. How would you feel if your sister was as educated as you are and she goes to a place of work and she's told that she will not be promoted because she's going to have babies because she's a lady? Or she gets, God forbid, she gets raped and attacked. So let us try and build a community that values every single person, where everyone has a voice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you for coming, Mrs. Bisi Adeleye-Feyemi. She's the former First Lady of Ekiti State, and it was a pleasure having you. Join us next week, same station at 9:30 for another interesting topic. Let's work together and advance women political participation. It's 10 o'clock. I'll be back tomorrow for Morning Crossfire. After the news, it's Midday Dialogue. God bless you and have a great day.
It's 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock.
I put 9, right?